we need to understand that our athletes will perform better if we can, and our athletes, executives, everybody will perform better if we can teach them how to control their CO2 buildup.
Most people think breathing is automatic, so they never question it, they never train it, and they never realize it might be the thing holding them back. Because when stress hits, when pressure rises, when performance actually matters, your breath is either working for you or it's working against you. And most people have no idea which one it is. Today's guest absolutely does. Shaye Patel has spent over 15 years working with elite athletes, military operators, and high-performing executives. People who don't get second chances when things go sideways. He's a CrossFit Level 3 coach, an ex-PT performance coach, an Oxygen Advantage advanced trainer, and most importantly, he's someone who understands performance isn't physical, it's neurological, it's physiological, and it's deeply tied to how you breathe under pressure. In this conversation, we break down why breathing just isn't about relaxation, why calm is often the wrong tool, and how your breath can become a tool to sharpen your focus and unlock performance people never even thought of. You can be strong, you can be disciplined, you can do everything right, but if you lose control of your breath, you lose control of everything that follows. So whether you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, a leader, or someone tired of feeling stuck in their own body, this episode will change how you think about something you've been doing your entire life. Now let's go against the herd. All right, Mr. Shaye, welcome to the Against the Herd podcast, man. I'm really excited to have you here. I've had the honor and the privilege of getting to know you over the last year and a half. And from day one that I saw you, like, you have a presence about you, and I have no doubt that that presence comes with a lot of the experiences that you've had in your life. So why don't we kickstart before anything else? Why don't you kind of share like a brief rundown of the wild and vast amount of things that you've done in your life, just to kind of understand the sandbox that you've played in, that possibly, and I believe strongly that definitely does influence the curiosity and the presence that you bring to the work that you're doing now.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's truly a pleasure and an honor to be part of a new project that you're also creating. And you and I are very similar in that we're always building new things, trying to help others. So I really appreciate, our talks all the time and this opportunity. So I was born and raised in Canada, parents of immigrants, mom from India, dad from South Africa. Grew up in a very conservative household, right? So, education was the most important thing, and which is always the most important thing. But I felt like I needed to do more. So I started playing sports, obviously like most of us in North America do. And I would try everything. It didn't matter, even if I was bad at it or good at it. I would just try, and I'd always become average at it. Then when I was around 12, 13, I started playing water polo. It was a sport that I fell in love with. I fell in love with the community. I fell in love with my coach at that time. And I just dove right into it, practicing twice a day, focusing on learning how to swim truly, right? Because I didn't really know how to swim that well. And that took me to, college. So I played water polo. My first year I played water polo at York University in Canada, in Toronto. And then from there, I played a water polo tournament in Annapolis. I got offered a scholarship to California. So I went out to California. And all this time, hey, there's some construction job over there. Do you want to work? I'm like, yeah, sure. Learn something about construction, work as a carpenter, work as, putting up and down, what's that called? Scaffolding, putting scaffolding around buildings, taking it down. There was no job that was never too low or too high for me in the sense of it's just building more opportunity and character. And from water polo, traveled around the world. I played in college. I had the opportunity to represent my country in various, countries, and I ended up going to Brazil. I lived there for 20 years. Um, and while I was there, I decided to go back to school, and I went to law school, became a lawyer in another country, which is not, I mean, yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds because you have to learn the language, learn the grammar, the vocabulary, all the things. Was able to do that successfully. I was 30 to 39. So I went back to school at 35, law school 39, finished law school 39, did the Brazilian bar exam because there's a national exam. And I passed. And so I was a lawyer. But during this time, I felt that there was something missing in the sense of my fitness because I was always fit, right? And stress levels increased, but I didn't really understand it. Like one of my biggest things was not understanding stress or anxiety um, because of my generation. If anybody out there is Generation X, that our whole thing was compartmentalize, go outside, play in the trees. Like that's how you figure stuff out, you know. Um, so that being said, that's was there, met my wife, and then as I was finishing up law school, I did the bar and stuff. I didn't recognize myself in the sense of a fitness. I was between sickness and wellness, right? And we can get into that paradigm later. But I'd always been fit, and that being fit doesn't mean being a competitive athlete. It's just being fit. All your markers are there. Um, and so I was driving down the street one day, and I saw this sign off to the corner, and I'm like, "What's that?" It's like CrossFit Barigui, right? And I'm like, "All right, well, I'll just drive in there and see what this is all about." And I drove in and I looked at it around. I was like, okay, this is, it's not a regular gym. And I talked to the guy there, and he was like, he's telling me about the three pillars and the methodology and all these things. I was like, well, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. He's like, yeah, you should come in, try an experimental class and this. I'm like, no, that's okay. I'll just pay for 3 months and let's go. And that was 12 years ago. Yeah, 12 years ago. And then I got back into it, fitness and stuff. But as I got into CrossFit, I started working out more and competing. I realized that there was always something missing. And watching sports, looking at other people, looking at other athletes, I realized that, hey, you know what? There's something that we're bringing to the gym, to the field, to the court, but we never understand how to differentiate the stress, right? Which parallel leads to how we're breathing, right? And how that stress level can cause that. So I started studying more and more and more in that. Then we moved to the United States, came to the US, got my level 3 here in the US, and I started working with a company that started working with military and stress response out in the West Coast. I got really involved with them and eventually moved out to Miami and build out more of that, continuing coaching, right? I kept coaching at CrossFit and my PT clients and whatnot. But over the last 6 months, yeah, coming up on 6 months, I really dived deeper into Breathe to Thrive, which is my company, and also focusing and learning more about stress response and working with a specific group of athlete now. Um, and obviously general public when needed. Um, but working with athletes who are trying to get that edge, right? Because if we have a goal, it's a lot easier to break things down and see where we're faulting, whether it be in your area, right? If it's a lack of mobility, a lack of um, strengthening, right? Internally and externally, because I know you work with that. Or it's where I come in, where it's more about, hey, how are we breathing? How are we performing? Wait a minute, are you stressing about a high school exam or a university exam? And that's affecting you, right? And that's a base level. And in the pros, we could even talk about their money problems, their money, which are stressors, right? So started diving into that, and that's where we are today. Focusing on the business, trying to blow it up, and trying to get people to really believe that breathing is important. You know.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought it to there. Before we dive a little bit more into there, I also want to bring up. It's funny because every time we'd have conversations, or I'd be in the vicinity of conversations and somebody would bring up something not related to CrossFit. It was like, oh, we went to go see a circus, the Cirque du Soleil, and Shay's like, oh, I did the trapeze. Oh, we did the high.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did the high wire. Hey, I walked on water. I walked on water. It's like I feel
Oh
like
no, no.
Shay. But by the way, I'm not saying that like there are some people that always want to one up everybody. That's not what I'm saying. Like you're just somebody which I
Well,
find
thank you.
fascinating, who's just experienced a lot of different things,
Yeah.
and as somebody who also does a lot of different things and likes to experiment and that, oh wow, this seems fascinating, let me try it,
Right,
what's
right,
the worst that could happen, right?
right.
I always found that very fascinating because most people stick to what they know. I find very few people are willing to be curious enough, number one, to be bad, and number two, to be okay with the unknown and just test it out for the sake of it. And I
Hmm.
find that it informs the lens in which you view the world and opportunity very different when you are that curious.
Yeah,
You know?
and I appreciate that, and that you said something there that's like trying to one up people. So I was brought up in a household, of, like I said, very strict. But my mother always said, when you have a success, share it with others,
Hmm.
right? But that kind of gets you in trouble because people don't understand the difference, right? So the
Right.
one and up isn't like you're showing off, right? It's more like, dude, but I did it. So
Yeah.
I think I was around 25 or 30, yeah, in between 25 30. I started carrying around a box all over the world that had proof of things I did, right? So like somebody would ask me, like you joked about the flying trapeze. I was like, no, look, here's some pictures of me like flying and stuff like that. Or, oh, you did this. I'm like, yeah, it's right here. It's like, you know what I mean? So it's really funny that you bring that up, But yeah, I've never shied away from anything. I think we live in a very contained society today,
Yeah.
right? Where and I mean in the U.S. we have more mobility. When I say mobility, we're able to move around the country, Europe as well, but a lot of other countries around the world, people are born, raised, work, marry children, and pass away in that same city or in the vicinity, And so I didn't want to be like that, and I think it comes from my family, right? Like imagine my parents left their countries, which is
That's
a highly stressful situation, to
right.
move to another, and which I've done multiple times. Um, and it is something that just you learn, you get more resilient, and I think that's the key word, resiliency.
I just I do have that question because you said dad is from India or mom is from India?
Mom's from India,
Mom
my dad's from South Africa, but
from
he
South.
is Indian. Yeah,
Okay, so okay.
yeah.
Regardless, both of those are hot climates. How the heck did they end up in a freezing Canada?
So that's a great question because in the 70s there was a big migration of Indians to the United States and Canada. And in that time, most people would go if they had a relative there already. So my mom's sister already lived in Ottawa. So my mom and dad went straight there, lived with her for a little bit. And like in the Indian culture, that's very, very, very common. I don't remember a time until possibly I was about 15, 16 that we didn't have somebody living with us. Like an aunt or an uncle or and their wives and their children. Like we always, like my brother and I always accommodated them because that was just part of the culture, right? So again, um, the level of stress, right? Is and just understanding because we never understood it, right? We never understood what was going on. It's like, okay, I guess this is what we have to do, right? Privacy wasn't a thing, So, but yeah, so that's how they ended up there.
Got
Yeah,
it.
it's wild,
Yeah.
wild.
Awesome, man. Hey, thank you so much for sharing that.
No, of course, man,
Um,
of course,
all right, let's tap into this whole breathing thing
of
because
course.
it's become more mainstream now. I would say more people have heard of it because there's been such a big biohacking
Yeah,
craze, whether
yep.
it's cold plunging, whether it's saunas, whether so there's all these things that have come up. some of it is great, some of it is not. There are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
misinformation out there.
Yep.
I'm curious, do you feel like if you were to assess if you were to look at somebody breathing, like could you tell certain things about that person just by assessing them, like just the shape of their breath, the way that they're
Right.
breathing? Is there anything like that that you can automatically pick out when you're looking at someone?
No, that's a great question. But before I answer that, Armand, if you allow me to go back to what you just said about there are so many techniques out there. There's so many different schools of thought, and I think that none of them is wrong in the sense of everyone has a valid position. It's just as we are biologically different, each one's gonna adjust to the proper techniques, whatever that may be, right? So I'm like you. There are some that I agree with. There's some that I disagree with. Um, the majority of breathing work out there, it, like I think the most important thing I need to say is we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not, right? Like there's a fantastic book called The Science of Breath. It was written in 1904. And basically, if you take that book and you put all of the mainstream breathing books today side by side, it's exactly the same thing, right? It's just what they've happened is we have the social media, we have the possibility to make it more mainstream today, right? And obviously, before that book, thousands of years before, right? We can go into the Bible and talk about that. We can go into multiple literatures from around the world. To answer your question, so yes, when you are watching somebody, you can definitely assess how they are breathing in the sense of if they're a shallow breather. So if they're shallow breather or a chest breather. So when you ask someone to take a big breath in, they're going to go, right? So you know that they're a shallow breather. They're not allowing all of the oxygen to fully enter their lungs, right? As we know, our lungs are kind of like a triangular shape, right? So to get the full lung filled, you definitely want to implement a diaphragmatic breath. Great. Another one is you can definitely see, and this is not coming from me because I'm not a specialist in this, but from things I've read and researched. If you talk to dentists, children, if you look at a child or later in life, mouth breathers, we don't start mouth breathing one day to the next. That's something we do as children, right? So you'll see like the jaws can go forward, like the jawline can go forward or back, depending on the breathing technique. So you can definitely identify that. Not like I don't go around looking at people's jaws and stuff, but you can tell a lot of athletes, specifically athletes and executives that I work with, are mouth breathers. It just becomes a natural response, right, to breathing. Um, Besides
Hey,
that, yeah, go ahead.
Shay, would you say would you say that it's a natural response to breathing, or would do you think that it's more a natural response to their environment? Right?
Great. Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I like how you put that. Yeah. It's definitely, it would be like a natural response to like how their nervous system learned to survive.
Mm, yeah,
Does that make sense? So
yeah,
like their
100%.
nervous, we have the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and there, it's the way that, you know, whether it's like tension, avoidance, control, whatever it may be, um, that's the way they respond. As you get older, as you work on it, you start to realize that like myself, I'm aware that okay, this is kind of starting to get. I notice my mouth and I'll close my mouth, or I'll tell my wife if I ever see her, you know, mouth breathe. I'm like, hey, look, what are you stressed about? What are you worried about? Because
Yeah.
you recognize that. So yeah, that is a good point that you bring up. It's definitely like a form of survival that the nervous system has developed.
Right. Right. And you know, one of the things because we've had these conversations about breathing and
Mm,
the nervous system themselves,
yeah.
there is I remember hearing something not directly with breathing, but it applies to the breathing, which is your psychology affects your physiology, and your
Mm,
physiology will affect your psychology.
mm,
So if you're breathing shallow breathing with your chest, it increases your brain's perception of danger.
Sure.
Like it's
Sure.
putting it in a sympathetic state. It's putting it in a heightened state, like, hey, there's an emergency.
Sure.
On the flip
It.
side, if you go into that a bigger deep breath, a
Mm-hmm.
diaphragmatic breath,
Right.
it signals to the brain safety,
Yep.
which now brings down the tone. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So on the flip side, if you're in a hostile environment, your breathing may change in relation to that as well.
No,
Right? So
absolutely, and I think that's where the importance of understanding and being aware of your surroundings, your environment, situations where anything can be a hostile environment. I think we forget that we think that hostile environments are only like aggressiveness, war, stuff like that, but anything could be a hostile environment,
right.
right? And learning how to, like you just said, understanding the difference. One thing I tell my clients and the teams I work with is your head is not connected to your body. Everyone says like, your head's connected to your body, but when I say that, I mean exactly the following. I mean, your brain and your body communicate in a completely different way, in the sense of your body tells your brain, will tell the amygdala when it needs to freak out, right? It's not your amygdala freaking out before and being like, heart, go fast, go fast, go fast, right? It's a situation, there's a response, sweaty palms, right? Heartbeat starts racing. That's it, providing the information to your mind, whether it's going to be a hostile situation or a high risk situation.
So you talked about your clients. Now, I know that you've worked with like the military, like special
Yep.
operators. You've worked with
Yep.
elite athletes. You've
Yep.
worked with CEOs. You've worked with general population.
Jared Bobs. Yep.
What's the biggest misunderstanding that they're missing
Mm.
regarding breath work that is robbing them of energy,
Yep.
focus, performance?
So I think there's two answers to that. The first one is the misconception that when you're focusing on breathing, it's about relaxation, right? Or it's affiliated with yoga, which I love. I think yoga is super important, but it's more associated with relaxation, right? I think that's the first one. The second one is that I don't have control. It's one of the biggest misconceptions. People think like breathing is like your eyes blinking, right? So it's something that's like automatic. It is automatic to a degree, right?
You're
You
not
have
going to
to.
not breathe. Your body's going to
Exactly.
make you breathe, but
Exactly. But so one of the biggest misconceptions is that they don't have control of that, right? And so they don't need to invest in it because the body's going to do it, right? Like for example, if you take a parallel of somebody who eats junk food all the time, right? And you tell them, yo, you got to take care of your heart, because you're no, but my heart will keep bumping until it doesn't anymore. Kind of like you have the control to do that. So that I would say that would be one of the biggest like misconceptions that a lot of these individuals have. And then when you run them through some very, very light basic stuff, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that, right? I didn't know I had the control to go from my sympathetic to my parasympathetic, down regulate, as I like to call it.
you got it. You said that the first thing was that it's associated with relaxation.
Yeah.
So let's I want to pick at that for a second,
Yeah.
because why is that bad? What are they missing if you only think of it as just relaxation?
Right. So when you're focusing on relaxation, I don't see it as a bad thing, but I think there's an appropriate time for relaxation and understanding the distinction of when you need to relax down. Like, for example, if you're in a calm situation, you're at the beach, you're sitting at the beach, right? You can do some very light breathing techniques for relaxation, right?
Right.
Where your body's just settled, right? Down. There's not a high stress situation, right? So there are going to be moments for that, right? Whereas the majority, I would say 95% of the time, we are living in a fight or flight situation.
Right.
Like you're like, wow, 95% of the time. But think about it, for the minute we wake up, right? We're thinking, oh my God, I got to rush. I got to make my coffee. And those are stressful situations, right? Between use stress and de-stress, right? So use stress being positive stressors, distress being negative stressors. So understanding the difference in that um, is very important, right? Because good stress is also bad, right? And I think when we just look at breathing as something to relax, we're missing the target, right? We're missing the target. And I need to understand that if I can control, because I control, right? If I can control how I'm breathing during a workout, how I'm breathing just before I go into a meeting, right? Because you don't want to go into a meeting, right, completely relaxed, right? You don't want to be aggressive, but you also want to be on point. So you may do some upper regulation, right, to get into that sympathetic, right, instead of staying in the rest and digest, right? So I would say that you definitely want the relaxation portion, excuse me, when you understand and you're aware that there are no immediate stressors, right? And then the performance breathing and the stress response when you can be aware. And I think that's the hard part, Armando. A lot of people aren't aware as to what their stressors actually are.
Okay, wait. So, because I want to make sure that
Yeah, yeah,
I'm understanding, and I want to make sure everyone's following here.
yeah.
Let let me share what I think you're saying, and
Mm.
then just
Sure, of course.
point me
Yeah,
in the right direction, right? So, what I'm
100%.
hearing you say is that one aspect of breathing is relaxation, which is what we normally tend to think of breathing as like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm just gonna chill. But you're also saying that breathing can also be used intentionally, right?
Hmm.
So what we're talking about here is
Yeah.
conscious use of breath
Right.
to stimulate a certain state. So if you're going to go and perform, you don't want to be like all floppy and relaxed. You want to be sharp, focused, and precise. So
Perfect.
that's going to take on let's call the breathing a different shape of the breathing. Like in other words,
Okay.
the rate may change, the depth may
Yep.
change, how you do it, if you're holding your breath, if you're not, like all of those things will are manipulators to achieve this desired result. And
Perfect.
what I'm hearing you saying is that the work that you do is yes, I can help somebody who's really stressed out decompress and chill,
Hmm.
but a lot of the work is now, hey, how do I take control of that breath to wield it like a sword
Right, right.
so that it becomes a tool for high performance, for precision, and also stress reduction?
No,
Would that be
perfect.
accurate?
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly it, you know. Um, just giving people the tools, like you said, shape it, but just giving people the
Yeah.
tools, you know. But excuse me, the most important point is that the misconception of the breath or breathing work, and that's why I say it's breath work is one piece of it,
Okay.
where performance breathing is the actual application, like you had just said, you know, into the situations, which was perfect.
So okay, wait. So let's now dive into performance breathing
Mm,
because I don't think that's a term that most people are aware of,
right.
and I don't even I'm pretty certain if you're not aware of it, you're not going to be aware of the benefits of that or what you can expect
Mm,
by utilizing that to amplify the training. Because if you're
right.
training for something, you're like, oh, this is why I'm getting better. But what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that performance breathing will take your fitness and put you at the better place to access it.
Yeah, and to perform better,
Right.
right? To
Okay.
perform better. So one of the biggest the key points of performance breathing is increasing your CO2 tolerance,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Right. So the focus is to increase your CO2 tolerance. Why? Because the higher the CO2 in your body, right, the less
Carbon
oxygen.
dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah,
Carbon
just in
dioxide.
case.
Yeah, yeah, of course. The higher the CO2, carbon dioxide in your body, right, the less oxygen. Obviously, we have that balance, right, the chemical balance. Now, what that does is that's going to tap more into your stressors, right? So we start to naturally hyperventilate. Think about it. We breathe between 14 to 20,000 breaths a day on
Wow.
average. 14 to 20,000 breaths a day. Now, during those breaths, during activities that we do, we are naturally, unknowingly holding our breath. When you hold your breath, your carbon dioxide increases.
Okay.
When you hyperventilate, right? When you get into a situation like, right? But that right there is, let's say, shallow breathing, or if we're shallow breathing, we're increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in our body all day long.
Wait, the
What
shallow
that's
breathing increases your CO2.
Yeah, because you're
Your
not expelling. Yeah, because you're not expelling as much carbon dioxide,
got it.
right? And
Okay.
the replacement, right, is not being composed, right? So let's
Okay.
say we start off with our CPO2 up here, right? Sorry, our oxygen levels, right, are up here. Carbon dioxide levels are here. As we go through the day, we start, playing around with it. That's why if you've ever worn the oxygen measurement on your finger, right? We always say it should be anywhere between 95 and 100, well, 99, right? It's never going to go up to 100. So 95 to 99. So
The
there's going to be
pulse,
time,
the
the
pulse
pulse,
oximeter.
there you go, the pulse oximeter. So we need to understand that our athletes will perform better if we can, and our athletes, executives, everybody will perform better if we can teach them how to control their CO2 buildup, right? So increase their tolerance. What is that going to do? That's going to help benefit their VO2 max, right? Their HRV, right? Heart rate variability, right? Delayed onset of lactic acid buildup. I'm not saying it takes away lactic acid, but it delays the onset of lactic acid,
Okay.
right? Your sleep will be a lot better. You can be able to sleep a lot better, right? And naturally be able to control your stressors, right? Without taking any medication, without, hyperventilating and stuff like that. A lot of work, not my work, but I've seen a lot of work in the breathing space, in the performance breathing space, where individuals have worked with people with asthma, and it's helped people get off of their pumps and stuff. But that's not on me. That's other research.
So wait, because I don't think I'm following. You're saying that if your oxygen is up here and your carbon dioxide is here, right?
Yeah,
And it, that the
it's gonna
amounts
move all
vary.
day.
It's going to move
Yeah.
all day, right? But when you're holding your breath, the carbon dioxide raises up.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Yep.
I'm not sure if it's the proper term to use by saying one is bad and good. It's a balance of some sort, right? Like they are what
Right.
they are.
They are what they are, and you
Would
need
you,
carbon dioxide
right.
in your body.
So when you say build your tolerance to carbon, because most people think oxygen. Very few
Right.
people talk about carbon dioxide. So like that shift, I think number one is important. And
Yeah.
then number two is, well, if I've always thought of, hey, how do I oxygenate my tissues more? You're
Hmm.
saying that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm saying like, but if we can improve your tolerance to carbon dioxide, its effect will be delayed at higher levels of performance at other with other
Right.
issues. So are you saying that people just need to be walking around holding their breath all the time?
No, 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 no,
No.
no. Definitely
Okay.
not. Definitely
So
not. No, no. That please don't do that.
okay, so
But you do.
that's
But
why
you
I'm
do.
asking.
No, no. Great question. But you do want to work on exercises, activities that will allow you to do that. For example, breath holds. Right. You can do breath hold ladders. 3 sets of 30 seconds. This is just an example. 3 sets of 30 seconds with a 1 minute rest in between. Holding your breath and just finding what's going on with your body, right? Talking to your body, listening to your body. Because if you get a breath hold going, all right, after a while, most people that are listening, and Armando, you can tell me if you've ever felt this, but when you're playing around, you're holding your breath, you feel like a contraction in your stomach,
Yes.
right? That contraction is your body's natural sensor telling your brain, hey,
You gotta breathe.
look, you got to breathe. I try to tell everybody a little bit different. It's, hey, just be aware that the carbon dioxide is increasing.
Okay.
You have plenty of oxygen still. It's just your carbon dioxide is increasing in your body. How do we expel that? Right? Once you're done or during the day, long exhales are the most important thing that you can do during the day. So there's one of the down regulating exercises that I teach people, right? That I was taught before, and I continue to use this because it's nothing I invented. I was taught in the past is a 3 seconds in through your nose, 3 seconds exhale out through your mouth. 3 seconds inhale through your nose, 5 seconds out through the mouth, 3, 7, 3, 10. Notice how the oxygen is always the same, but we're getting rid of the carbon dioxide. And a lot of people, when they do this for the first time, they feel a little odd because they're getting a full amount of of oxygen, right? Because they're always living in that, state of a higher carbon dioxide. Oh, but my pulse oximeter is reading 93, 94. No, that's fine, but it's your body's reaction to doing something different, right? So those would be like, those are two different exercises, like breath holds for sure. There's CO2 tables, there's O2 tables, right? Oxygen tables where you do the consistent same amount of time of a breath hold, or you build up, right? So they're two different ones. I like to put people underwater, right? Because you really just can't cheat, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it was just another level of stress, right? But you find that it becomes more of a cooperation between your mind and your body than anything else, right?
Okay. Shay, when you're so as you're doing these exercises,
Mm.
is the idea that this is for training, but are you trying to do any of this stuff while you're performing? So if you have an athlete
Mm.
working out, or even let's say a military operator, are they are they doing this work prior, or is this a technique to be used for the performance?
Good call. Good question. Good question. It's like anything. Do it before. Train it before, because for example, if you're in high intensity, you're in a firefight, you're in the middle of a pro basketball game, football game, I'm not going to tell you to, hey, let's go back to down, to 3 3 3. No, you just can't. So these are things you need to practice during your training period, or whatever that looks like, right? On a daily basis, you can practice them. You can practice them every other day, but it's something that's off. For example, like we can use the example of CrossFit. You're not going to focus solely on technique when you have to do 100 thrusters for time, right? You'll start on technique, and then you'll be aware that you're losing technique, right? Because there's that fine line that we always talk about in performance, right? Of technique, right? And intensity. So which one are you willing to give, right? If I focus on intensity, my technique's going to go down, right? My breathing's going to go down. If I focus on technique, I'm able to control my breathing a lot more. But during high performance, it's a lot harder. So let's say you're playing football. You're just on the field. It was a 3 and out. You come off. You're breathing hard. You have the time
Got it.
to recover, or in between plays. Football generally 25 to 45 seconds. So we need to teach individuals in that sport specifically, and other sports, baseball, 20 seconds, how to down regulate in that period to get ready to stay aware for the next, hit, the next pass, the next play.
So is this here's where the question is coming from. So as your fitness improves,
Mm-hmm.
especially cardiovascularly,
Yeah.
the biggest marker of fitness improvement is how quick your body recovers.
Yes.
You right?
Yes.
So how soon
100%.
can I, like, if I just did a sprint, how soon can my heart rate come back down? Is a marker of fitness progress more so than running even faster. They're just different, but it's a little bit that recovery period. The quicker it is a really strong marker for fitness. With
Absolutely.
with training CO2 tolerance, is that is that a similar thing? Meaning, does that stay with you, or is that a a tool to be used at the moment when you need it? Do you understand what I'm asking?
No, 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 I totally understand. So you're asking if um, it's applicable during performance, or is it something just to be practiced and then just let it go, like just
Yeah, like, does your body,
like,
will your
yeah,
body have adapted because you've trained it
sure,
before?
great question.
Now all of a sudden it can just tolerate CO2 better and you don't have to worry about it.
That's an interesting question because it's a paradigm, right? Like fitness is going to be how fast you recover and repeat the same thing
And repeat it.
within the
Yes.
same time zone. So if you just run like your son's one of the most amazing runners in the state, right? Possibly the
Right.
country. But let's say he runs a 5K, right? What's his fastest 5K?
1455.
1450. Perfect. He just finished, right, his race. We want him to recover because now he doesn't have to repeat that again.
Right.
But now let's say he's in training and he's doing repeats.
Right.
That's where we want to measure how fast he can recover
Okay.
and perform the same way. So in CrossFit, it would be an EMOM, right? That little piece of time. Can I bring my heart rate down just enough so I can repeat the same thing with the same intensity without losing my heart rate, without losing, my breathing and get into panic mode of, oh my God, I can't breathe, which most athletes you've seen have done that,
Right.
right?
How would okay, can we extrapolate that for somebody like a CEO or just a
Sure,
regular person? How does that
sure.
come into a daily life scenario? That,
Well, I
like,
mean, as a high performer in the C-suite, right? You're in between meetings, you're rushing, there's things coming at you the whole day, right?
yeah.
So you want to be able to you don't want to snap, right? Like you don't want to stress, you don't want to throw out things that you may regret after or not, right? But you want to actually take a beat. And I think in that situation, it's not the same as the Super Bowl. We got to make quick decisions. Yes, you have to make quick decisions, absolutely. But I think you have time to take a beat. There's an amazing interview with Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs went to a university campus and he was taking answers from the students. And one of the students asked him a question and he sat there at the front at the podium and he was just thinking. He was just thinking. We're talking about Steve Jobs, one of the most brilliant human beings ever. And just thinking, thinking. And then people started getting agitated. And like, wait, he doesn't know the answer. You got him. You stumped him. Right. And he noticed that people were saying that. And basically what he said was, me thinking and breathing makes you all feel uncomfortable. But I want to give you the best answer possible. So I'm going to take my time. So I think in this sense, working on your CO2 tolerance for executives, for people in managerial roles, instead of being reactive, it helps them to be responsive,
Okay. So
right?
that applies to parents too. When you wanna
100%.
you wanna throw a kid through the wall.
Well, even your partners too. Even your partners too. Like my wife and I, we have this wherever there's something that's on our chest or we want to talk about it. It's give me a second. Let's we'll come back to this. Just give me a second, right? So you take the time,
Yeah.
breathe it out. That allows you to downregulate, reform the question or reform your answer and try to find a middle ground.
Yeah. You know what? Because I'm hearing you and you're using the word, like breathe it out. I think one of the issues with this is that there really is from a language perspective,
Mm,
big because we're talking about breathing, but it's a completely different breath than if you're trying to relax. It's a different breath whether you're
yeah,
trying to psych yourself up before an event. So we just keep saying breathing.
right.
Very similar, actually. You know what? Another word that's similar to that in English is love.
Yeah.
Love, like I can love you as a friend, but when I say I love you, it's not the same love that I would tell my wife or my kids,
100%.
right? But we use
100%.
the same word, and as a society, we kind of have danced around it. I know in the Greek there are four different words for love, and
Mm,
they're very different, right? Like
diverse,
philios
yeah.
is like brotherly love, and eros is more like erotic love, and
Hmm.
it's more descriptive. And so in Greek, you'd be able to express with more precision when I say love what I'm actually talking about.
Right.
Where I think part of the issue with this whole breathing ecosystem is that we have breathing,
Yeah.
and it would be probably better if there were other words that we could use
Mm,
to direct the intention of what we're trying to do. Like if we were still talking about breathing, we can say decompress breathing, we
right.
could say relax breathing, we can say stimulate breathing, we can
Like
say optimize.
identify each shape
Yeah,
of breathing. Yeah, I
correct.
mean, and I think that's one of the things is in the past millennia's like the the breathing was a very natural thing. It was a very communitary thing. Like people did it together when they whether they were in their places of worship, whether they were in their schools, whether it was whatever it was. And today there's that disconnect, which you're talking about. It's been lumped up into one whole thing when it's also taken for granted, right? Breathing is taken just like love, right? It can be taken for granted. Um, and one of the most frustrating things I think for most of us who do work with this area is um, that breathing's free. It's free, but nobody wants to invest in it. So um, it's very hard, and I've come to you before about this, to ask your guidance and your help on this is trying to make people understand the importance of investing their time, and obviously that relates into financial resources if you're going to find somebody to help you with it, into focusing on these things to be better at their skill. Like what people think of when we come in to work with them with stress response or performance breathing is that we're there to take over, or we're coming in as a psychologist, or we're here to no, there are specific people for that. If you don't know your lane, you're going to get in trouble, right? Like, know your lane. So for me, it's more like, look, I'm here to just make you aware of what's happening, right? I work with people from all walks of life, and the common thread is they're not aware as well that they're doing these things,
Yeah.
right? They're holding their breath when they're stressed, or when they're writing an email and they have to send a very important email or message. People hold their breath because they're anticipating anxious, they're anticipating a result that they don't even know, right? So when we anticipate things, or when we start stressing out and worrying about things, we're automatically holding our breath, which goes back to the increase in CO2, which creates other issues, whether it's, passing out. You've seen many people pass out when they hold their breath when they're doing a deadlift, right? Like let's say you're lifting a very heavy deadlift, right? Why? Because they're holding their breath. Oh, but you shouldn't hold your breath when you're doing a deadlift. Well, there is a point where you are going to hold your breath, where you have the bracing and everything like that. But there's also a point of exhale. You don't hold it for the whole time. Or you can hold it for longer if you work on your CO2 tolerance. So that's just one example in the strength area.
Right. Have you had much experience in the breath work you're doing with uh, healing or pain?
No, I have not. I
You
have not.
haven't.
No, I have not. I know that it's a very, very special area.
Okay.
I know there's some amazing people doing that, but I have not. I do know that 100%, like for me personally, I'll use an example of myself. I just ran the marathon this past weekend. And in mile 16, um, I was running great, ran a great half. And at mile 16, my right calf blew up. And one of the things I focused on was I've never been taught it. I've just read it. I've, heard about it. Every inhale that I was taking, I was directing that energy down to my calf, right, to alleviate the pain, and it would go away for a bit, and then my groin would start, and then I would start to do the same thing, and that's what I've heard that there are people out there who actually work with that, and it really works, and it definitely got me through the last 10 miles, you know, and directing it. And it's just being aware. It's like, okay, look, I'm not going to focus on what the end goal is right now. I'm going to focus on taking in a full breath in through my diaphragm and just sending the energy, the thought, the breath down to that, right? We use this a lot, not for healing, but for when we're doing breath holds. A lot of people will notice that their palms start to sweat and they feel tingling. And the reason that happens is because all of the blood naturally goes to your vital organs, right? It becomes a protective mode, right? So I think if we can do that to protect our body, we can definitely do that to heal our body as well.
Well, I get that you're saying that your focus and your training is not directly with people with pain, but you have experiential knowledge that, hey, look, I was in
Yeah.
pain, and because I was intentional, I was able to manipulate that pain
Hmm.
in such a way that I did the last 9 miles or whatever it was, yeah, last 10
10, yeah.
miles,
Yeah.
last 10 miles, uh, being able to finish, whereas most people would probably have stopped because
Yeah.
they were so much in pain. So
Right.
I think that speaks volumes. And again, we don't always need, double blind placebo. Like, you know what? Experiential data, I think, is very helpful.
Oh, one
And
hundred percent. And it comes down to noticing, like, just doing tests, see how fast your heart rate goes down, you
right,
know? So, when you're working out or when you're out for a walk, see if you can slow down your heart rate just by breathing. Inhaling, I'm not saying holding your breath, inhaling, exhaling, but inhale smaller, like the three, maybe exhale for a longer exhale. Psychological sigh. Psychological sighs basically is just like just do one. Do one right now and you'll feel
what is
like
what
you
is that? What is
like
that?
you feel well
Yeah,
basically when you're doing that you feel like this the oxygen actually entering your body, right? A
right.
psychological sigh is actually just like you're literally getting oxygen into your body and it's an explosion of carbon dioxide coming out of your breath,
Okay.
right? So
So
it's
that
really interesting.
sigh, that
Yeah.
sigh is a cleansing almost
It's
of.
a cleansing. Yeah. Like you see a lot of people be like, oof, right? But a
Yeah.
oof, they didn't take in any oxygen before they did the oof. They just did the oof, that was good. Or like, but if you take in a big breath of air, like you feel, right?
Yeah.
And then if you go down the yoga, like they'll use this a lot in yoga, like lion's breath, right? Like, right? That like increases a little bit of your body temperature. So it's really interesting, like how the breath can work in multiple ways.
So I look, we've talked about a lot of different things. I like to, especially when we've kind of covered a lot of different
Yeah,
things.
sure.
If you could say, hey, what are the three things you'd want people to take from this
Mm.
after having heard this conversation that they could start utilizing in their life? What would one, two, or three things be that you're like, hey, look, if you got this, I'd be really happy that you got this from this conversation?
Yeah, awesome. That's great. Great. The first one would definitely be aware of how you are responding to situations, right? When I'm saying be aware, it doesn't mean be aware of your surroundings, but be aware of what's happening in your body. What
Okay.
is your body telling you, right? So it's hard at first, right? But start with your breath in the sense of, do you feel that you're breathing from your mouth, right? So I would say the first thing I want you to take home from this, and it'll literally change your life, is, are you a mouth breather? The first thing, right? Shout out to all my Stranger Things friends. Uh, they'll get it. But if you're a mouth breather, why? Because then you know, just by closing your mouth, you've already helped your body learn how to breathe better, clearer air through your nose, right? Because again, don't forget, breathing through your nose, you're filtering out bad things, dust, particles, all that. So you're actually getting better oxygen into your body than through your mouth. That's just a little antidote. The second thing that I would say that I would want everybody to take away from this is focus on breathing into your diaphragm, right? So into your belly, just to start, into your belly instead of your chest. So if you want to test how to do that, you're going to put your hand on your belly and then just try to push your belly out every time you take a breath in, right? So the
As you
awareness of,
inhale, your
as you
belly should
inhale,
go out.
exactly, right? That's just a start. There's
Okay.
so much more to it, but as a beginning, just start that, right? Because as you take that breath into your belly, you're going to notice you'll feel a little lightheaded. There's going to be more oxygen coming into your body, right? Which are going to seep down into all the alveoli and all that scientific mumbo jumbo that we don't need to get into, but which is important, right? And the third thing is working on your breathing. It breaks your armor, right? It brings your resistance uh, to becoming resilient, right? Learning to breathe helps you be more resilient, right? In difficult situations. I think that would be the most out of these three, right? The more you can focus on your breathing and understanding your stressors, you're going to be able to be more resilient.
So awareness,
Awareness.
uh, cover your mouth, breathe through your
Yeah,
nose,
you breathe through your nose and building resiliency.
and build resilience. Okay,
Yeah,
awesome. Hey, Shay, thank you so much. Is there somewhere where people can find you if they're interested
sure.
in performing at the highest level and tapping into the strategies that we've been talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at my handles at Patel underscore Shay CF, or my website, www.breathe2, the number two, thrive.com.
Breathe, the number two, thrive.com. I'll put it in the
Yeah.
show notes,
Yeah.
but I just want people to have a place to really
Yeah,
collaborate
please.
with you.
Thank you.
And again, hopefully anyone watching, anyone listening to this, the big thing that I always strive for here, doing this Against the Herd podcast, is this idea of going against the herd, being not contrarian for the sake of just, if somebody says up, saying down, but question what you thought to be the norm,
Mm.
because very often the excellence lies in the fringes, and people who are doing by the very nature of what the average aren't, are the ones that are getting the best results. And when you look at the highest performers, they are doing things that are different. One of these things
Yeah.
is optimizing their breath work for performance
Mm-hmm.
and how to adapt to stress responses much better. Imagine you're in a stressful situation that anytime that you're in these situations, your whole day gets shot because you're more nervous, you're burning through energy, you're tense as hell, you're probably snappy, versus all of a sudden you've learned how to optimize your stress response, and now instead of that being an entire day affair, you're able to reset that in 2 to 3 minutes, and now you have the rest of the day to contribute value at the highest level, as opposed to, oh, this just threw off your entire day, right? Somebody swerved in front of you and freaked you out, and then now your heart is racing and you're tense the entire day. Well, what if that was just, by the time you get off at work, it's a non-issue anymore,
Exactly.
you know? So I'd encourage anyone that really wants to operate at the highest level um, to really check out Shaye. Shaye's a great teacher just in general.
Thank you.
He is a great communicator. He is a great presence. Is one of the things that really attracted me to him. Anytime he was near, the energy in the room would shift because he was able to see what others don't. He's looking at the things that are not being said, the things that aren't really being done. And there's some of it is natural, some of it that is that he's picked up over the years
Oh
of
yeah.
doing this. But Shay, again, I want to honor you for being who you are, because you really do make an impact in any room that you're in, and this breath work that you're doing, I think, will start radically shifting whoever decides to put it, and will put them on a different stratosphere as far as performance. So again, anyone that is interested in being in that echelon of performance, whether you're a mom and you want to be the best mom that you can
Yeah.
be, or you're a C-suite and you want to operate in the boardroom, or you're a high-level athlete and you want to squeeze out the last little bit of your performance, I highly recommend check Shay out. And that's it. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Shay.
Thank you, man. Thank you for this honor. It's great, and all the success and love to you, my man.
All right, man. Take
All
care,
right.
guys.
Thank you.